do we feel like KD is more frustrated with the franchise? Obviously, it's because of Kyrie doing all the things that he did. But is he more frustrated with the franchise or with Kyrie?
Kevin, and rightfully so, I think has gotten upset over the years when people have tried to ascribe and assume what he's thinking. So I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But I am going to say that I don't know how he could have been happy with Kyrie. I don't know how it could have been. So if there was a last straw, maybe we'll find that out. Maybe we won't. But the Nets decided, they made a decision that they would rather risk alienating both guys than yielding to Kyrie Irving. That was a decision that was made at the highest levels of the organization. They followed through with that, and this was the consequence.
The thing that frustrates me about this whole situation, because remember, Kevin Durant said he wasn't going to get involved between the organization and Kyrie Irving and trying to say one thing of like, oh, maybe you should give him this, you should give him that. No, he said he was going to sit out of that, and that was earlier this week. Yet it kind of feels like now Kyrie Irving didn't get what he wanted, and Kevin Durant siding with the player and saying, all right, to hell with the organization here, right. I'm going to move out on my own too. Like, that's the frustrating part, because it does feel like you're kind of backtracking on what you said you weren't going to do, which was to side either way, to get in the middle of it. And just from the optics of this whole thing, it feels like he is siding with Kyrie Irving because Kyrie didn't get the max deal that he wanted, the big extension, and there's no stability in that for Kevin Durant in being able to see this thing out long term. Like, there's a lot of blame to be passed around here, and we're going to be debating this for a while about all the places where this went wrong. Kyrie Irving, in the end of this, deserves the majority of the blame because of the decisions that he made. Remember, you hated my word coaxed on Monday.
Oh, no, I didn't hate it at all. I just thought it was really good.
8 times after you said it.
It was fantastic. I didn't hate that word at all.
Kyrie Irving helped Kevin Durant make up his mind to come to Brooklyn. He didn't say...
I think helped isn't even a strong enough verb.
Like,
yeah, coaxed.
Coaxed. Okay, I'll go ahead and use my word I used on Monday. But so Kyrie Irving deserves the majority of the blame here. Kevin Durant cannot be absolved of the responsibility, though, for this thing becoming a failure of epic proportions. Like, we talk about the 2013 Los Angeles Lakers, the 2004 Los Angeles Lakers, these dream teams that were supposed to win an NBA Finals and fell flat. This, to me, rises to the top of the list of, like, seismic failures in the NBA.
They did have injuries. I mean, Kyrie had injuries dealt with.
But they never
dealt
saw
with injuries.
Right.
Yeah. They all had injuries. So the reason that they didn't achieve as a team was partially due to injury. But that was not the frustration of the Nets organization. The Nets organization, and by the way, I know some fans are like, because we've talked about how the Nets couldn't have another repeat of last year. But they say, well, there's no vaccine mandate. It wouldn't be a repeat. But it wasn't just about the vaccine. The vaccine was just the highest profile situation.
Sure. Right.
And it wasn't just about the injuries. It was about the intrinsic way they went about their business. It completely turned off the organization, and they said, we're not going to do this anymore. And I think Harden looked at it and said, no way. Durant ultimately yesterday, and there was a lot of skepticism in the league over whether Kevin would actually hit this button.
Okay.
Which is why I think it's interesting that yesterday Kendrick Perkins, who's known him very well for years, he described it as courageous that he hit this button. Trust me, during this week, teams were having meetings. If Kevin Durant becomes available, what are we going to trade for him? They were preparing for it.
Okay.
But they weren't like calling the Nets and offering because they were like, I don't know if he's going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't even think the Nets knew if he was going to do it. The Nets had a whole bunch of contracts. I don't know if you saw yesterday. The Nets signed a whole bunch of players.
Claxton.
The Nets made a trade yesterday.
Patty Mills,
those deals were going out as if they were preparing for Kevin not to do it.
Right.
And so Kevin doing it, I think it was like a real breaking point that we've never really seen him hit before. And so now I think it's sort of unpredictable what's going to happen going forward.
If the Brooklyn Nets had stood their ground when they told Kyrie Irving, you're not going to be a part-time player with this organization, by the time Christmas rolled around, they caved. We talk about giving power to players in an organization. They immediately told Kyrie Irving, you are the emperor in Brooklyn. Because if they had stayed steadfast, Sean Marks, Joe Tsai, the owner, everybody, if you're not going to get the vaccine, okay, but you can't play here. The minute that they realized that they thought they needed him, never mind the fact that when he finally came back, they were having the best record in the Eastern Conference. They were playing extremely well as a basketball team. Kevin Durant gets injured, James Harden gets traded. But that set off everything in motion. That the minute that they backed down to Kyrie Irving, if you're Kevin Durant, you're thinking, wait a minute, I'm glad that you want Kyrie Irving to have that kind of power, but I don't know if I want to follow that guy. And you shouldn't be following that guy either. If they had stood their ground, Brian, Courtney, and Christine, we're not having this conversation, in my opinion, because Kevin Durant would have seen the organization say they stick to their guns. They're going, hey, Kyrie Irving, what are you going to do about it? Then you put everything in his court. The minute that they gave in to him and allowed him to continue to do those things, that led us to 3 years after the day he left the Golden State Warriors for the Brooklyn Nets.
Every step of the way, they moved the goalpost. So I feel like the Nets can't really blame anybody other than themselves for ceding their authority to their stars.
So KD no longer wants to be a Net. His wish list, Suns, Heat on that wish list. Freddie, I'll start with you. Where do you think the best landing spot for Kevin Durant is?
Well, I think anywhere not near Kyrie right now. I think we can all agree on that. That's the best landing spot for Kevin Durant. I firmly believe that the best landing spot for him is the Miami Heat, because you got a dog warrior there in Jimmy Butler who is going to be that guy that Kevin Durant can look at and say, yep, he's got a handle on that. He is not going to be afraid to tell me what time it is and how the clock is going to be built. And plus, they played so well together on the Olympic team. Their games match each other so well because they're so much of a versatile player. And now Jimmy Butler won't have to do as much because he literally carried the Miami Heat to the NBA Finals a couple of years ago. He literally carried the Miami Heat to having a 3-2 series lead against the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. At a certain point, you're Jimmy Butler. You know you can do it, but it's nice to have help.
Yeah.
And now you have the ultimate help. I can't believe you're using help and Kevin Durant, ultimate in the same sentence. But in modern basketball, more than ever before, you got to have, we say this all the time on Freddie Fitzsimmons, 9 p. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Radio, Monday through Friday. We say this all the time, me and Ian. You got to have two greats and a good. You have a chance to have two greats like this, and there's plenty of good that you can put around them. Plus, you get an Eric Spoelstra and a Pat Riley in that Heat culture. We saw how Kevin Durant worked in a structure of culture with the Golden State Warriors before he decided that he didn't want to be a part of that anymore. If he's at the point of his career, Brian, Courtney, and Christy, that he wants that structure, I don't think you can find a more perfect organization for that than it comes to the Miami Heat.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.